Hey developers. So today we're going to do something a little bit different, and that is we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. We're going to talk about negative mindsets in software development and how that is hurting you, but also helping you in your career. So make sure you guys stay all the way to the end. We're going to talk about it. First, we're going to have a quick word from our sponsor, and that is Udemy. Udemy is my favorite course platform. They have tons of really cool courses for as cheap as $9.99. Oftentimes, you can get them on sale. I put a link in the description of some of my favorite courses, so make sure you click on those. If you end up buying any of them, I actually get a few bucks, and that really helps the channel, and I appreciate it. So yes, check out the links in the description below. I appreciate it. So the main topic we're going to talk about today is coming from my podcast. If you don't know, I have a podcast. It's called Self-Taught or Not. You can go to selftaughtornot.com. So this is a podcast me and my buddy Dylan do. We talk all about the do's and don'ts of software development, some really cool topics we did one about Dylan's story last week. We did one about burnout, the secrets of technical book publishing. I've actually created a couple books, so if you want to know ever how to do that, check out the podcast. But really, what the topic I want to talk about today is imposter syndrome and also like negative mindsets, like why do people hate PHP and how you should handle that as a software developer. It doesn't matter if you're self-taught or you've been doing this for a few years. These things happen and you should approach it a certain way. So me and Dylan riff off this topic. This is going to be an audio topic here. I'm going to place the whole thing in this episode. So, sit back, get your headphones on, listen to it all the way. If you want, you can download it. And also go to selftaughtornot.com or on iTunes. We actually support a bunch of different ones. iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Stitcher, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, pretty much anywhere you can get a subscription for a podcast. We're on it. Subscribe to it and, listen to it, check it out. And also, listen to this episode. I think it's a really cool episode about these topics. And a lot of people are talking about it. So yeah, sit back and enjoy. Here we go. Oh yeah, one more thing. This episode, if you're listening to it here on Friday, it'll be out on Monday. So you're getting a sneak preview of our episode that's coming out on Monday. So this is not out yet on our Self-Taught or Not podcast, but it will be out on Monday. Yes. Thanks. All right, so today's main topic is negative mindsets. So I think we've touched upon this on a previous podcast, but today I just want to get all into it and just talk about some of the things that I've seen, as a software developer, some of the frameworks and places where I see this happening, and then a little bit of how to overcome it as well. And I just want to start with one thing that I think that's sort of tangentially related to negative mindset, and that is imposter syndrome. What do you think about imposter syndrome? What does that mean to you, Dylan?
So it's so strange. I recently had a conversation with this. So I've been doing a lot of interviews for my work. And one of the things, occasionally I get recognized when I get in this interviews, which is always bonus points. So good luck on that, but not going to pass you through because of it. But at the end, we had some extra time, and the guy I was interviewing clearly, and he had, how do you get over imposter syndrome? Because he was going on like 10 years of experience, but still felt like he was just like tricking the system. And I think part of it, at least part of the way that I've gotten over it, and I think a lot of devs do this, is they're very passive in their careers instead of very active. And so when you're very active in your career, you start picking up a lot, and you start maybe getting a little bit of confidence, because it's oftentimes a confidence thing. But I also think that now that more devs are becoming either self-taught or through boot camps, that they sometimes feel like they've missed out on some key things in a computer science program, and that sort of tends to lead to this sort of imposter syndrome.
I think part of the reason that I don't feel this way, and I don't know if I've ever really felt this way, and people have different definitions of imposter syndrome. I like the one you're talking about there, but basically the definition, if you look in the dictionary or in Wikipedia, it's the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own effort or skills. And the way I feel about it, and you go back to having a college degree, like I went through getting a college degree and getting a computer science degree at that, and getting into software development right out of college. And even with a software development degree, I had problems getting a job right away. It was 2008, 2007. The economy was not doing great in the area I was living in. But even after all that, I never thought like that I was an imposter or like I didn't deserve to have the jobs. I always thought like I always deserved to have the jobs. Like I always thought that the reason I didn't get them was because I didn't work hard enough. I didn't understand the concepts enough, and I wasn't good enough during the interviews to get the job. So I guess it's something where I hear a lot of people say, and it's a real struggle for a lot of developers. It's just something I haven't personally experienced that much, but I definitely see that people do experience this. I think it's overused a little bit. It seems like anytime someone's a little afraid of something or has anxiety about some position, they say, "Oh, it's imposter syndrome." I don't think it's that. It can be a debilitating problem for some people, and I think that's the point I'm trying to make here.
Yeah, and it can be something where sometimes you set unrealistic expectations for where you are in your career. Like I have people who show up to these live streams. They're like, I have no idea what's going on. I'm like, well, how long have you been a developer? He's like, I'm not a developer yet. Well, all right, clearly, because we're building something that's production level, and you need to make sure that you set your sights in what, like, you may be at where you're trying to understand for loops. You shouldn't just be like, yeah, I'm going to build this progressive web app that's using server-side stuff. And you have to understand where you're at, where you want to go is good, but not let that sort of intimidate you.
Yeah, don't let it intimidate you, and also make sure you stay and have a positive attitude towards it all, that you can do things. There's a lot of psychology behind this of knowing that what you can and can't do, and being able to not limit yourself. There's a lot of limiting beliefs out there. Let's move on to other places where I see negative attitudes or negative mindsets. Since we both work in web development, I think we both have our frameworks that we love and we hate. Typically, there's these things called framework wars. I see this a lot in the different communities. Like, for example, I've seen tweets that have gone retweeted thousands and thousands of times that were literally just, I love React. Like, people love, that's really positive. But I've also seen tweets that have gone thousands and thousands of retweets that are like, Ember is dead. Like, Ember.js is a JavaScript framework. It got really popular about the same time AngularJS 1 came out. And in those times where Backbone was popular. It's one of the very first single page application JavaScript frameworks, but it hasn't gone as much. It hasn't gone as popular and I kind of rate popular by the amount of NPM downloads, by the number of people putting questions in Stack Overflow and Googling and overall developer awareness as things like React and Vue and Angular at this point, Angular 2+. But, Ember still has a live, pretty active community. If you go, I've been to EmberConf a couple of years ago when everybody said Ember is dead, and they have thousands and thousands of developers, or thousands of developers at their conferences. There's still an active community. It still has a 6-month release cycle. So that's kind of one example of a lot of negativity for one framework, but it's still doing pretty good out there. Another common one is PHP. I know I hear a lot of hate for PHP. If you don't know, PHP runs all your WordPress sites. They're written with PHP. And sometimes people kind of look down on PHP developers, maybe because they think that it's too easy or it's beginner. But it's still really powerful, and there's plenty of jobs out there for PHP developers, and it's great.
Yeah, I know I'm guilty of this. I am totally okay shitting on technologies, which I would say I necessarily shit on is probably bad terminology, but I do think it's okay to look at a technology, see its state in terms of the industry, whether it's increasing or decreasing in popularity, because typically that then increases or decreases your viability as a candidate. And like how much money goes up. So like statistically speaking, you'll make more money doing JavaScript than you would PHP, and more projects are started in JavaScript than PHP. And then there's also like older technologies that I feel need to die, but people hold on to. jQuery being one of them. But yeah, so I don't necessarily agree that this is a negative mindset, as long as you take an analytical approach to it. And I think I think when people are tweeting, I love React, and then people tweet, I hate React. I think every developer can love and hate the technology that they're working at depending upon the day. I know I can. Like, I typically like Angular, but there's some times where if Angular was a physical being, I put my hands on it. You know what I mean? Like,
you come on, we all gotta get along there. But yeah, I guess there's a let me think about this. So there's differences between like being frustrated with a framework,
mm-hmm.
and having that kind of side, and then there's the differences between like a really old framework, like if you're like SOAP or ASP or something that's not being. I'm sure some ASP developers listening right now that says this is being maintained still, but some technology that's no longer being maintained, and then kind of having a negative mindset to that. I don't know. I think there's differences between the two, and just try to realize that every tool has its purpose. And yes, there's some technologies that should die and people shouldn't be using anymore. There's some current technologies like PHP. I think that it's okay. I mean, maybe PHP isn't your preference, but I think the idea of like everybody bashing PHP is not good.
I mean, it's okay to have an opinion about these things. I think when was it GitHub or Stack Overflow does like, what's your most hated language? I think JavaScript and PHP were like number 1 and number 2. And so like there's plenty of jobs in JavaScript, but it's also still very hated. And same with PHP. So it does, but you can't argue with stats that PHP runs like 90% of the web. It's just that 90% no one goes to anymore, but it still runs it.
I remember too, I was at a conference once and I bumped into a group of developers, and we had, at most conferences, they place you in, you can just go to any table and just talk to random people. And I was doing that. And one conference goer just hated Microsoft so much. It's to the point where like they said, the only thing I ever use for Microsoft is GitHub. I'm like, well, and they didn't even want to use GitHub after Microsoft acquired them because they were like total Apple fanboys. And I'm like, that's a little crazy. That's a little much, but that's how some people are, and that's who they are. I guess the point being is that you can definitely like hate different software frameworks. You can definitely do this, but I guess maybe when it gets to the point of you shaming other people for using it, then that might be crossing a line. And it's okay that a lot of people hate JavaScript at the time and hate PHP, but when you shame other people, that's not good. Let me move on to being in a team and negative mindsets in a team. So it's easy. It's easy to put people down based on their knowledge, and a good team will have kind of you'll have your senior developers, you might have some kind of intermediate developers and some junior developers. And I really think in a good team that those senior developers should be really mentoring. I think you agree with me on this, Dylan. The junior developers, explaining best practices and telling them what they're doing wrong and what they're doing right too, and giving them positive feedback. And in the same instance, the junior developers should really be, should understand the problems that are happening, being willing to take feedback and become better. I think that's kind of fosters a real positive relationship in your environment.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like one thing I always do at any team that I'm on is always sort of knowledge transfers, where if I see something that someone's doing incorrectly, 10 minutes after stand up, let me give a quick demo to the entire team, because chances are they're not the only one that doing it. And perhaps maybe by me giving this knowledge sharing where, hey, let me give this demo, they might be like, that's cool. Someone else might say, I got an even better way. Now you sit down and take notes, Dylan. I think knowledge sharing is something that we all should do. And I also got asked in the last stream, what is the difference between a good junior developer and a bad junior developer? And the simple answer is a good junior developer, and any good developer understands they have room for growth. And I've worked with developers at multiple levels who think that, look, they can do what they want and they got it there, and good enough is good enough. And then I've worked with developers who are like, hey, cool, how can we make it better? How can I continue to grow? How can I continue to gain that knowledge? And that way you don't end up repeating that, 10 years experience, but you've only really repeated that first year 10 times.
That kind of goes to the next part, code reviews. I know some developers that love code reviews, but I think most of them hate it. And they don't like being critiqued on their code. I think some people who are doing code reviews feel, and I felt this too sometimes, where like I don't want to be overly critical to someone's code review because I feel like they would take it negatively, and it hurts people's feelings sometimes. But this is the perfect time you should probably be doing. You should be actually be a little bit more critical, as long as you're not too pedantic and you're not, giving them crap in every little tiny line. I mean, what is your thoughts on that?
I think it's the perfect time to be critical. And I think it's also, you can be as like, I have no problem saying, hey, fix the spacing here. Like to some people that would drive them insane. But these are things that, like, on the most fundamental level in a pull request, spacing and formatting and linting is not something that you should even have to think about. You should just auto do it. Now, some developers are like, look, if it doesn't break, I don't want you to leave a comment. And that's a really bad idea to leave, because there's plenty of ways that you can write something that works, but it can't be maintained. That, how many of us have worked in crappy legacy projects that you're like, why in the world is this a 250 line function? Like what is going on here? It doesn't adhere to the single responsibility principle. It doesn't adhere to the open close principle. None of this, and it's breaking. So this sort of goes back to the first point about junior developers and developers in general being open to feedback and open to growing. And I think code reviews, if you're open to it, if you're open to having someone who's going to say, hey, what do you think about this, and giving maybe an example and why, and actually learning from it. I personally love doing code reviews, and I love having my code reviewed. But I would say the majority of developers don't. I would agree, because they take it. Code is a very artistic thing at times, and when you say that your art is ugly, whether you're nice about it or not, some people can't handle that. And most developers, I really do feel like they're stuck in that junior or mid level, and they don't really want to grow, and they just think, hey, I got years of experience, that's all I need, and I don't want to do any more. And code reviews, when you're trying to make them better, a lot of people aren't open to it, unfortunately.
Yeah. What do you do if you're in the opposite end, you receive a code review, but you don't agree with some of the comments? Can you then do comment back to them in the same PR?
Yeah. So it depends if they're in the same room as me. A lot of times we're oftentimes working with external developers, or remote, or you're in a different country. Like it could, but I've had this happen a couple times where, one of my colleagues has commented on here, and where I'm like, I think you're wrong, and let me tell you why. And I've had to, where they've responded back, no, you're wrong, and let me tell you why. And so I always try and take it a point where I don't necessarily want to enforce my styles and my guidelines, but what is best practices and what can communicate a better product. And as long as you try and take out ego, and you try to take out what you think is best, and really just have, okay, well, this is why you should do it, and you adhere to things like readability, and maybe if you're using Angular, the Angular style guide, whatever it is. I try to stick to things that, like, hey, this isn't an opinion, and this is actually a better item, and this is why. So I've been on both sides of the coins, and I've learned some things, and some things you can let go, some things you don't. And oftentimes what I find is when people move forward without like the suggestions, they don't want to listen to you, that 6 months later you get bit in the butt by it, and you're like, well, I sort of told you so.
One other thing to add to that point, and we'll move on, is that if you do a code review and you have an idea of something's wrong, and there's a difference of opinion between you and the code reviewer, or you're the code reviewer and the person you're reviewing has a difference. Some organizations, I did this in mine, we created a best practices document where we just kind of dumped on, like, we should have tests in here, and we believe end-to-end tests should go here, and that we follow TS lint rules, and that we need prettier setup that helps auto format your code. And so we have like a group of rules in place just in a Confluence document, which is a kind of like a wiki. So we have that in place. So if there is a disagreement on something, we can refer back to our best practices document and say, oh, we decided to make that rule here. And if it's not in the best practices document, then you can add it into the best practices document. So if it ever comes up again, then like, oh yeah, this is how we should do it. We should make this should be a section and not a div or something like that. And one last thing is say what you mean, but don't say it mean. Keep that in mind when you're doing code reviews. I'm still learning how to do code reviews well, and I think I still, to be a good code reviewer and to review other code, it does take time and practice like anything else. So let's move on to online, some kind of negative mindsets we see online. So when I think of negative, I think of Twitter and Reddit and things like that. Like Twitter is really great for developers. If you're not on Twitter, I'd say you should be on Twitter. If social media is not your thing, I think Dylan, you're not a big social media fan. It's okay.
I'm not a huge fan of Twitter, period. I have sort of a funny side note on Twitter. A little while back, I applied to Twitter because I was like, okay, cool. Maybe, they're a big company. Let's see what's out there. And I just remember going through the application, and they asked my gender pronoun, and I was like, where is the legend? Because that's how I want you to refer to me. But it was one of those things where it was like, God, we gotta, this is a Twitter application right now. And I was dying as I did it, and I was like, I'm good.
I mean, Legend's pretty good. Or Ninja, you could have been Ninja. That's a little too on the nose. The 10x. So one thing I've seen recently, like some opinions, there's a lot of nonsense on Twitter. So, and if you've ever looked at any politics, politicians on Twitter, on both sides, if you're in the United States or even around the world, there's just so much negativity and just outright nastiness. But that's okay. That's their right. People will put it out there. I try to stay away from that stuff. One cool, interesting trend that I seen recently was there was this 10x developer meme that kind of went around on Twitter. So this guy this Indian startup investor listed what he believed a 10x developer was. I'll put this in the show notes. And it kind of blew up because some of the things they were saying was just like insane, like 10x developers, faster at typing and does all these things that was kind of just nonsense. And everybody was bashing on this guy and putting on crazy comments on. And then I just think that it kind of went a little too far. I mean, yes, you can disagree with somebody, but when you go into the part where you're bashing people, that's not great. Reddit, Hacker News, Twitter, or just there's a lot of toxicity there. Another quick story I have is there's another YouTuber called Joshua Fluke. He someone targeted him on. There's a subreddit on Twitter, or Reddit. That's like a forum on Reddit, which is a place where people can go and talk. Where people were talking about CS career questions. And someone had made this huge thread bashing Joshua Fluke because a lot of his videos are about new developers and how to look for let me think, how to be a better developer. But he does have some negative things where he makes fun of how recruiters work, and he's a big proponent of Lambda School. And so this guy made this big, huge thread on how he hated Joshua Fluke. So stuff like that, there's a lot of toxicity, I just ignore that type of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of salty dudes on the internet. We could go on platform after platform, and it can all be summed up as haters gonna hate. All right, yeah, there's always gonna be people who see other people succeeding on the internet and are hateful about it because they're not succeeding, and it's hard. It's easier to throw stones than to change your situation. Is there valid stuff when it comes to Joshua Fluke and saying having an opinion about completely dumping on college and working for companies? Sure, there's always two sides of the coin, but You know, you have these also so-called experts on the internet who are anonymous sources. I work for Google. I got 20 years experience. Let me tell you why he's wrong. It's like, bro, you don't even have a profile pic. All right. Like, what are you talking about right now? I guess we'll just take your word for it, man. But yeah, there's always going to be people on all these platforms that are salty and throwing hate rather than facts.
And you have to just be able to ignore those people. You know, as a new developer, if you're listening or you're a developer that's been on doing this for many, many years, you have to kind of just take that with a grain of salt, ignore the negativity, and just keep with the positivity.
Yeah,
Trolls are really, go ahead.
I was going to say to that point, one thing, as you know, we've both experienced sort of being out there in a sort of a semi-public level, right, with our channels and all that stuff, is you always get those people just show up, live stream, tell you you're a piece of shit, and you know they hope you die. You know, typical stuff. When I first started YouTube, I tried to talk with these people because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. What you have to understand is that there's some people that are just lost causes. Just block them. You get someone who sends you one negative message, block. That's it. There's no point in responding to these people. They're not there to have an intellectual conversation. They're not there to have a debate. They are there simply to tell you how awful you are, and because that's what they enjoy doing. So if you have this negativity, and in the world of the internet, you have this simple ability on every social media platform to simply block, hide, delete, and get rid of these negative people in your life, in your internet life, which is a large portion of life, it feels like nowadays. So go ahead and take advantage of that.
I have a story that kind of, I opened up myself to some criticism. I had, on my YouTube channel, I try to stay really positive and I try to do tutorials. But at one point, a couple of years ago now, I thought it would be a good idea to get into this kind of negativity cycle that sometimes YouTube has. And if you don't know, like anything on YouTube, usually if you write something controversial or something negative, if you put in like something like, you know, the 3 problems with JavaScript, that'll get a lot more clicks than the 3 best tips for JavaScript. You know, people kind of feed on that negativity a little bit, and it's kind of fun to hear people rant. I think that's, you know, that's what people do.
That's half of my commentary in this podcast is
Exactly. So I had gotten into, there was a couple of other YouTubers that had thought, that started kind of bashing each other. Like one YouTuber had quit their channel and this person made a whole video about why they were awful and why they should, I don't want to name names here, but why they quit their channel. And then this person started putting up a beef against this person and creating videos for it. And so they were like, it's funny if you think you YouTube and we're in this kind of small programming niche, there's still the same sort of schoolyard tactics that you see everywhere with people, you know, you look funny, you look stupid, I'm going to make a video about it. So I tried to be a little edgy and I made a video on a pretty popular YouTuber telling them that I wasn't like making fun of them, but I said, you know, I really want to create really quality content that will do better than your content. And I don't know if I called them by name. I might have, but it had erupted into this huge flame war with this other YouTuber where they had made a response video to mine and they had a much bigger audience. They didn't name me by name, but people in the comments threw my channel name in there. And I had literally for 2 days, I had hundreds of like negative comments on one of my videos. I had death threats. I had people telling me to go kill myself. It got to the point where I was like, this is crazy. And I think the video was only up for 2 days. I deleted my video. I took down the video, and then I emailed that other YouTuber saying I was getting, you know, I was getting a lot of negativity and death threats, and if he would take down his video, and he did. So after that point, this was a few years ago, I was like, I'm never going to do this. And it was like a big learning lesson of like, you know, that's not me. I'm not like Mr. Edgy guy trying to pick fights with other people.
Yeah, it's a good life lesson too of, you know, oftentimes we want to be sometimes we want to be somebody we're not. And if you just sort of accept yourself for who you are and present yourself as who you want to be, I should say, you'll be happier and you'll be more successful typically.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like being myself is being more positive and helping people than trying to like bring up fake controversy or negativity. By the way, that the other YouTubers, I'm happy with all those the other YouTubers. I've chatted with them. I'm still friends with them, online friends with them. So everything's good. It was just got a little intense there for a minute when I started trying to be more edgy. What do you think about controversial topics? Do you think that that's okay? I mean, everybody has an opinion. Is it okay to throw up a controversial opinion to?
Yeah. I mean, I think controversy is fine as long as you are respectful. I don't know how much controversy there's going to be in software development, but
Well,
I mean,
let me give you an example. Like, do you think, like, for example, there's a lot of videos and a lot of YouTubers out there that are soliciting advice for new developers. And a trend that we've seen lately is either day in the life of videos where they're completely unrealistic to what a real developer does, or they're saying, this one developer, I saw a video the other day that was this developer learned how to be a developer in 1 day and got a job, or they got a job in 1 month or 3 months or 6 months. Do you think that's more inspirational, or it's a little too negative because it gives unrealistic expectations to new developers?
I mean, I think it's clickbait more than anything else. And so like I suppose if you showed up and like, hey, I'd like to learn to code, and I had an internship that was free, and I was like, sure, show up, whatever, and we'll see what happens. Like, could it happen? Yeah. But what's the likelihood? Like, let's just 99.99% of the time, most people aren't going to learn. Most people by day 0, by day 30, when they've never done coding before, are going to go and get a junior level job. It just doesn't happen. Can it happen? Sure. I could go out and buy a lotto ticket and just rake it in too. But I think as long, I don't do clickbait titles. I hate them, and I recognize that they work because people, they see that. If you want to get a #1 video, all you gotta do is put JavaScript is dying, right, in all caps, and like 3 exclamation points. And you can do it once every 2 months, and that video will be your #1 video for every single 2 months. But you just need to, as long as, I don't know, it's scummy. That's what it is. It's sort of scummy, but I think it's okay. I had someone on my channel who got their first job 2 months in that I interviewed, and it was a 25-minute interview talking about his process, what he went through, and it set a very realistic idea of like, look, I started every single day. I asked if I could work for free, and he sort of had this thing. Now, if it's a video where you go and you're like, yo, I got a job in a week, I showed up, I just went on Codecademy, they gave me 80 grand, it was crazy. Like there has to be some realism to it.
Exactly. Yeah. You can get into clickbait titles really easily, and I've done a few. I know one YouTuber that's pretty popular that every month or two he does the top 10 programming languages, the top 10 for top 5 frameworks, but he does like 6 or 7 times a year, and he knows that at least one of those will go like somewhat viral. I just think it's funny. All right. Well, back to the topic of negativity. I think we covered a lot here. I think the point being of all this is that, as Dylan succinctly put, anytime you're on the internet, there's going to be trolls. You got to ignore them. If you're working with frameworks, pick the one that you like the most. Sometimes, I think just keep with it. Don't worry about people that may try to shame you into different frameworks. If you like Ember.js, go with Ember.js. Yes, it's not going to be as popular as React. There's not as many jobs out there, but it's fine. You can jump into it. If you like WordPress, stick with WordPress. You like it. And then, if you're on a team, make sure you can take advice. Make sure you can, don't be afraid to do those code reviews. Don't be afraid to receive feedback from your code. Don't take it as a personal attack on you. Try to learn from it and try to keep learning. I think that's all I got today. Do you have anything else, Dylan, you want to add?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say as we wrap up here is that I'm very big on negative role models and people that you don't want to end up like. And so if you have some negativity in your life, whether it's trolls, whether it's coworkers, whether it's family members, keep a very strong mental image of what it is you don't want to become. And oftentimes you'll find that you go and become what you want to become. And just use that negativity for fuel, because the greatest thing that you can do for someone who's hating on you is just be successful. So, take that and just use it and create those mental images, because it's really helped me and sort of the journey of software development and life for that matter.
Awesome. Peace.